Learners with diverse abilities and background, presented by Balanggit Estela and Cresino Keith. Objectives. At the end of this discussion, the students will be able to first, identify the differences between disabled, gifted, and talented learners. Second, recognize the different learning elements of a program in each subgroup. So first, students with disabilities. The growth of special education in the Philippines has been given a relatively good support all these years, both by the government, non-government organizations, and stakeholders in response to the needs and challenges of the time. So, as education develops and as time goes by, there are findings that special educations or special learners must need to be addressed, their needs. So, because of this, countries such as the Philippines have passed a law in order for the needs of the special learners to be catered. The level of awareness of both the government and the private sector in providing equal opportunities to children with special needs has considerably increased. So it is not only the government who are making steps in order for the needs of special students or special learners to be catered and to be not compromised. They are also what we call private sectors that is supporting this advocacy as well as the stakeholders. One positive development in special education is the implementation of the Republic Act 7277, otherwise known as the Magna Carta for the Disabled Persons. So in order for this law to be provisioned and for this rights to be sorted out, we need to pass a law. And the government has decided to enable this Republic Act 7277, which is the Magna Carta for the disabled persons, so that they cannot just take advantage of the education that they deserve, but also for the right that they also deserve. Students who are gifted and also has learning disabilities are those who possess an outstanding gift or talent and are capable of high performance. But we also have learning disability that makes some aspect of the academic achievement difficult. So, it is not only the prodigal students who are taking advantage of this law, but also to the students that we call learning disabled. Those are visually impaired, um, auditory impaired, or those students who have difficulty in attending um, common setup of education.
Gifted and talented students. There are at least three subgroups of children whose identified are both gifted and learning disabled. So the first one is those with the subtle subgroups learning disabilities that are formally identified as gifted. Children have been familiarly recognized as gifted or went to their high levels of achievement and or high EQ scores. So those are students who are disabled or person with disabilities nga taas og mga IQ. Even though they are disabled, this kind of students are brilliant in ACADS, but bawing-bawi sad sila sa ilang intellectual intelligence. So as we can see, if makita tag mga inana nga mga students, for example, makita tag mga pungkol, pero ilahang mga intellectual IQ is high. So, makonsider na to sila as a gifted, even though they are students with disabilities, but they are brilliant, and they are also very gifted in terms of high EQ. And now let's proceed to the second subgroups of the students and gifted. So the second one is average achievers whose normally level of achievement hides their learning disabilities. So those are children have often go and notice for their giftedness or their learning disabilities. So this kind of children with the special needs that are solved from both their high abilities and their learning problems are rarely identified at are often poorly served. So bisan pa man sa inana sila, they keep hide sa kakulangan sa pagkaton, but still they are gifted as students. So the third one is the children who love and identify learning disability and who are also gifted. So children who are bright, often struggle profoundly at school, hence being recognized as learning disabled. So this kind of gifted and talented students that are also lucky in learning but lucky in learn achievements, but they are lucky in talent. So even though they are not very smart or not high in EQ, but also they are gifted. They are gifted students even they have disabled or nasa mga kulang-kulang like kulay tiil, pungkol, pero they can show their talent. For example, that disabled students are very talented in terms of drawing. So, na siya capabilities nga how siya mo drawing, how siya mga imagination, how siya mo analyze og mga problem, then how kay siya mo kuan bitaw kanang how kay siya mo mubuhat og mga butang nga kanang bihira lang kay makita sa isa ka tao. So even they are belong to disabled, they are also a gifted. So swerte Japon sila no as a human, swerte Japon sila kay bisag na disabled na sila, na sila makapansanan, even though mga kulang-kulang sila, pero gitagaan Japon sila og talento nga gihatag ni God para sa ilaha.
Next is elements of a program for a student who is gifted and talented. So the very reason why there are different program and approach that the government has decided to integrate to the educational system so that the capabilities and skills of these learners will be met. So it is very different from the common learners. So the elements of a program for a student who is gifted and talented, regardless of how services are delivered, there are some common elements which characterize an individualized program appropriate for a gifted or talented student. First, it is different in pace, scope, and complexity in keeping with the nature and extent of the exceptionality. So at this point, it depends on how advanced the skill of a talented or a gifted student. So they cannot just put um, a subject that is very common when the student or the learner is very advanced. So this is what it is explaining here. Next, it provides opportunities for students to interact socially and academically with both age peers of similar disabilities or intellectual peers. So there are no division in the program for students who is gifted and talented. There are no divisions because the very purpose of the government is not only to provide education but to for the learners, for these gifted students and talented students to have a social life, because sometimes because of their exceptionalities they are having a hard time socializing. So this is also one of the steps of the government for these gifted and talented students to have a social life. Next is incorporates adaptation and or extension to content process product, pacing and learning environments. So as what I have discussed earlier, that the environment, the complexity, the content, the process, the product of this program is very different from the common learners. So that is why um, because of this integration of these processes or contents, it has an adaptation. The integrated subjects for the program is only intended for the level of exceptionality of the learner or the gifted student. Next, independent guided study. So sometimes there are gifted students who are very dependent for their tutors. So one of the steps of the government is to incorporate independent guided study for the gifted students. Next is specialist teachers. So that's what we called SPED teachers or special education teachers. This is a specialized um, course for those teachers who are very willing to educate gifted and talented learners, because it is not easy to taught this um, exceptional students. Next, flexible groupings which provides opportunities for learning with intellectual peers. So as what I have mentioned earlier, that the government purpose is not only to provide education to these exceptional students, but also to provide a social life for them.
Students from indigenous background. Different cultural norms affect students' perception of time. Example, punctuality, group work, and importance of education, authority, or competition. So, possible jud no, nga mapektuhan jud ang students kay ug lahi ang mga tribes sa isa ka grupo. Di jud na magkasinabtanay, kay lain man mapulong ug mga istoryahan nila. So likewise, nonverbal messages express professional expression. So as long as the eye contact, voice tone, gesture, and personal space can have different meanings in different cultures. So it may be difficult to understand nonverbal messages because different cultures have different expectations about the contact of body, gestures, and even facial expressions. And cultural difference says between the uses of nonverbal signals can easily lead to confusion and problem over intentions and reactions. So if someone display what they feel to be inappropriate non-behavior, ilahan nang i-dismiss as a rude or disrespectful. So mo na ang mag-cause jud og conflicts kay pananaw man sa ubang tribe is lahi. So even good nga ang ilahang point ato kay dili gud siya lain pero sa uban nga tribe ilahang gina pananaw kay murag lain naman jud siya. So mag-cause jud siya og conflict. So another one is one of the most learning revolves around learning how to learn. One of the most important elements of indigenous and learning revolves around learning how to learn. Tribal teachers begin teaching by building on a common place. Indigenous teaching focuses as much on learning with the heart of learning with the mind. So indigenous teaching facilitates learning how to see how one really is rather than an image manufactured through one's or other egos. And this could be all for our discussion in this module of 5 in lesson 2. Hope that you learned something from us and thank you.